Have you ever wondered how far obedience to authority could push you? It's a question that may seem simple on the surface, but it delves deep into the human psyche. We, as humans, have a natural tendency to obey authority figures. It's a trait that's ingrained in us from childhood. To listen to our parents, to follow the rules set by teachers, to abide by laws implemented by governments. But what if this obedience is twisted, manipulated, pushed to its limits? What if authority figures command us to act in ways that conflict with our moral compass, our sense of right and wrong? Enter the realm of the Milgram experiment, a controversial study that dared to venture into these dark territories of obedience and authority. It's a story that unfolds like a psychological thriller, revealing the shocking lengths people may go when under the influence of authority. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram sought to explore this very question. Milgram set up a unique experiment to test the boundaries of obedience. This was more than a simple psychological study. It was a venture into the depths of human nature, a journey to understand how far an individual would go to obey an authority figure. The experiment was set in the confines of a Yale University laboratory, a place that reeked of professionalism and seriousness. The participants were ordinary people, folks like you and me who had responded to a newspaper ad seeking volunteers for a study of memory and learning. The participants were assigned two roles, the teacher and the learner. But here's the twist. The learner was an actor, a confederate in on the experiment. The real subject was always the teacher. The setup was cleverly designed so that the teacher would believe they were administering real shocks to the learner. The teacher was tasked with delivering a memory test to the learner. If the learner answered incorrectly, the teacher was instructed to administer an electric shock. The shock started at a harmless 15 volts but increased by 15 volts with each wrong answer. The shock switches were labeled with terms ranging from slight shock to danger, severe shock, and the final ominous switch marked XGX. The learner, sitting in an adjacent room, would let out pre-recorded cries of pain and pleas for the experiment to stop as the teacher increased the voltage. However, an authority figure, the experimenter, dressed in a lab coat and carrying a clipboard, would insist that the teacher continue, stating it was crucial for the experiment's success. It was a chilling setup, one that pushed the teacher to their moral limits, forcing them to choose between their own sense of right and wrong and the commands of an authority figure. And remember, all this was under the guise of a memory and learning experiment, adding an additional layer of deception and manipulation. As the teacher began to administer shocks, the tension in the room began to rise. Little did they know they were on a path that would question their very understanding of obedience to authority. What happened next was shocking to say the least. As the experiment unfolded, the majority of participants, or teachers, continued to administer what they believed were increasingly severe electric shocks to the learners. Despite their discomfort and distress, they pressed on, obediently following the instructions of the authority figure in the room. The teachers were not heartless or sadistic. On the contrary, many showed signs of extreme emotional distress. They hesitated, questioned the authority figure, and expressed concern for the well-being of the learner. Some even broke into a sweat, trembled, or laughed nervously. Yet when reassured that they would not be held responsible, they continued to administer the shocks, even when they believed they were causing serious harm. What drove these ordinary individuals to act against their moral instincts? The answer lies in the power of authority. The teachers were not responding to the pain of the learners. Instead, they were responding to the authority of the experimenter, a man in a lab coat who calmly insisted they must continue. This obedience persisted even when the learner protested or fell silent, suggesting unconsciousness or worse. A staggering 65% of participants continued to the highest level of 350 volts. They did this despite their personal discomfort, their ethical reservations, and the apparent suffering of the learner. In other variations of the experiment, where the teacher was made to feel less personally responsible, or where the authority figure was less authoritative or physically present, obedience rates dropped. But still, a significant number of participants were willing to administer shocks, demonstrating the profound impact of authority on our actions. These findings threw a harsh light on the darker aspects of human nature. They showed that under specific conditions, ordinary people could be led to commit acts they would normally find abhorrent. The experiment revealed not just our capacity for obedience, but also our potential for cruelty when instructed by an authority figure. The results were chilling. revealing a dark side to human obedience that no one had expected. The aftermath of the Milgram experiment was as controversial as the study itself. The ethical implications were profound and sparked intense debates. Many argued that the psychological harm inflicted upon the teachers was unacceptable, considering they were led to believe they were inflicting real pain on another human being. The emotional distress they experienced was palpable, forcing us to question the boundaries of ethical research. Moreover, the Milgram experiment was not a one-off occurrence. It has been replicated in numerous forms across the globe, each time yielding similar results. This consistency underscores the compelling influence of authority on human behavior, further fueling the ethical dilemma. The experiment's impact reached far beyond the confines of the Yale University basement. It echoed through the halls of academia, the courtrooms, and the very fabric of our society, stirring thought-provoking conversations about obedience and morality. The Milgram experiment continues to raise important questions about human nature, obedience, and the power of authority. So, what does the Milgram experiment tell us about human nature? Well, it paints a rather chilling picture. It suggests that we, as humans, can be easily swayed by authority figures, even to the point of doing things that go against our moral compass. The experiment shows that the average person, when under the influence of an authority figure, can commit acts they would otherwise find unthinkable. This experiment is not just a historical curiosity, but a mirror to our present realities. It holds a mirror to society, reflecting our susceptibility to manipulation and coercion. This isn't to say we are inherently evil or weak-willed, but it underscores the power of authority and the potential danger of blind obedience. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our capacity for harm when instructed by those in power. Perhaps the most important lesson from the Milgram experiment is the need for each of us to question authority and think critically about our actions.